بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Today we'll be starting, we're continuing with the chapter on fasting. We're doing the book of Safiinah Anajaah, which is the ship of salvation. Sorry. So the Sheikh says, Faslun. So we already covered the basics of fasting, which is when you start fasting, and also a couple of points on regarding, we haven't really covered what breaks Salah, but he talked about the intention, making sure you have the intention before at night time, and also he talked about the conditions that make it obligatory for the person to fast, or for the person's fast to be accepted. So he talked about Islam and being a Muslim and being an adult, and also having the ability and the health, and also that you're not traveling. So khair, inshallah, we'll continue on from there. Today we're going to be looking at what breaks the fast, and we're going to finish off the chapter on fasting. So Shaykh says, فصل يبدل الصوم بردة وحيض ونفاس أو ولادة وجنون ولو لحظة وبإغماء وسكر تعدى به إن عم جميع النهار. Okay. So the Shaykh said, section fasting is nullified with apostasy. So if the person becomes an apostate, he leaves Islam, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, obviously his fasting is not going to be accepted, even if he becomes a Muslim again whilst still fasting. He doesn't break his fast, but he becomes a kafir, a non-Muslim, and then he returns to Islam again in the same day without eating. Still his fast is not going to be accepted because of that intention is gone. And one of the conditions for fast to be correct is Islam. So there's no Islam if the person apostates. Wahayd, and also menstruation. So the menstruation cycle nullifies the fast. If a woman starts fasting and then she gets her period during the day, like let's say dhuhr time, and she's been fasting the beginning of the day, then that fast is not accepted. She has to make that day up. Even if it's 2 minutes before Maghrib, she has to make the day up. Wa nifas, and also which is postnatal bleeding. If a woman gives birth and then she's bleeding, let's say she was fasting in Ramadan, one day of Ramadan, and then just before Maghrib, no, she gave birth. That day she would have to make that day up, and also, so that fast will be broken for two reasons. One is there will be postnatal bleeding after that, and also giving birth, which is the next one, or wilada. So if she gives birth, that breaks the fast as well. So she would have to make up that day. Or jununin, and also if the person becomes insane or insanity, even for a moment. So if a person becomes insane for a moment, let's say he's someone who takes like pills, or he has like schizophrenia, or he has an mental illness, and that mental illness is, like, for example, it's not always, sometimes. So it happens to him when he's fasting. He doesn't know where he is, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's not conscious of his action, and then he was fasting, and then during the day he comes back to normal. Still that fast is not accepted because the intention, the niyyah, is not going to be there. Okay, and also we know the pen is lifted for the one who is insane as well. وَإِغْمَاءٍ, and if the person becomes unconscious, even for, they say, for even if it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, the intention is going to go as well. So that person, his fast is not accepted.
What about what happened to me is during for Eid al-Fitr, the second Eid.
Yeah.
I had an Eid al-Fitr.
Yeah.
So it's like Eid al-Fitr, the second one, right?
So, yeah, that's the first one, Eid al-Fitr.
Before we did Eid al-Fitr, it was we fasted for one day. What was that? What was that one?
The day after, you mean after Eid al-Fitr?
Yeah. What was it called?
It's
You fast
Shawwal,
for one day.
yeah. Fasting of the Shawwal.
Shuam. And Shuam, I had a back pain from that day. I had a very back pain this year, and I woke up. Then I think the family advised me to take one paracetamol. I took paracetamol with water.
Yeah.
But during the day. But my fasting is it acceptable that day?
No, obviously, because you ate something, that fast is not going to be accepted. So, like you said, you had back problems, and it was the day of Shawwal. It was the Sitta Shawwal, the fasting after.
I just have one water.
Yeah, if you have anything goes down your throat, it's food, drink, that fast breaks. But you're not sinful. It just means that your fasting has broken, and you would have to make that day up if it was an obligatory fast. But it's not an obligatory fast, so there will you can break that fast. It's not a problem, especially for illness, or you're not sinful for breaking that fast. But if you wanted to complete your Sitta Shawwal, the 6 days of Shawwal, then you would just fast another day. Okay, but if you have medicine, obviously that's counted as eating. That's counted as eating, so that breaks the fast. If it's water, if it's drop of water, if it's paracetamol, it's considered as eating, so it breaks the fast. If you did that in Ramadan, you wouldn't be sinful, and you just make up that day. Wallahu alam. Okay, we'll continue with the next one. The evidence they have for the person becoming unconscious is they say it's like the person who's become the person who's insane, like someone who's insane. He's mentally not there for him to keep that intention. He'll make that comparison. Okay, the next one is if someone has وسكر تعدى به إن عم جميع النهار. Someone who had alcohol, they said, and then he ends up being intoxicated throughout the whole day, the entire day. So let's say someone who had alcohol. So we know alcohol is haram. Alcohol is haram, but then again, we differentiate between, because drinking alcohol doesn't make the person kafir. It's a major sin. It doesn't make the person kafir. So that's why the ulama are talking about these rulings as well. So let's say if a person had alcohol the night before, okay, and then he had, for example, or let's say he had the intention to fast. After Isha, he had the intention to fast, and then he had alcohol, and then that alcohol made him, for example, intoxicated throughout the whole day. The rest of the night and the whole day, he was intoxicated. And let's say he didn't eat anything as well. So still his fast won't be accepted. Okay, because they give him the same ruling as a person who's insane. The person who's drinks alcohol, he takes the same ruling as a person who's insane. So here they're not looking at if he's sinful or not. They're looking at if his fast is accepted. So they're saying it's not accepted. Okay. Allahu alam. Is that clear?
Say that again.
So if the person becomes intoxicated, let's say he took some drugs, like he had the intention to make he had the intention to fast the next day, like after Isha. But then, because he was addicted, I don't know, he took some, let's say, he took some drugs, which is like alcohol as well, intoxicates the mind. He took some heroin and that, or he took some drugs that wasted him, and he didn't know what he was doing. So he was intoxicated throughout the whole day. So is his fast going to be accepted?
No.
Yeah, so they're saying his fast is not going to be accepted because, and they said it has to be throughout the whole day. So let's say, according to what the Sheikh is saying here, if he had alcohol, he had the intention to fast, he had alcohol, and then he was intoxicated throughout the whole day until, like, let's say Asr time, he was feeling sober, he was feeling okay, and he hasn't eaten anything. According to what the Sheikh is saying, his fast is accepted because he had an intention during some of the day.
If he stopped it and his intentions, are you saying if his intentions was to fast the next day?
Yeah. But then he had something that made him high or intoxicated him.
By accident?
Not by accident, on purpose.
And he drank it?
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. So if someone had alcohol and then he was drunk the whole day, then his fasting won't be accepted because he won't even know if he ate something or if he drank.
Right.
He's mentally, he doesn't know what he's doing basically.
Yeah.
Okay, khair. That's quite clear. So these things break the fast. We're going to look at the next one, which is فصل الإفطار في رمضان أربعة أنواع. So he says the section on breaking the fast in Ramadan are 4 types. So he talks about how, sometimes it is wajib, or women have to break their fast, or certain people have to break their fast, and some people are allowed to. So the first one he talks about is wajib, kama fil hayd wa nufasa. So he says it's obligatory for the woman that is menstruating and the woman that has a postnatal bleeding, that she has to break her fast. She can't say, "Oh, I'm going to continue fasting. I'm too shy and this." And so she has to break her fast. So that's for the women that is in her menstruation cycle or in postnatal bleeding. So if she sees that she's got her period started during the day, she has to break her fast. She has no choice. وجائز كما في المسافر والمريض. Similarly, or not similarly, but let's say it's permissible for the traveler and the sick person to break their fast. So they're allowed to either continue fasting or to break their fast, or from the beginning not to fast. They're allowed to. Okay? So it's not obligatory upon them. They don't have to break their fast. They want to, and they find traveling is easy for them. They're going on a plane, they don't find any trouble, or they're not traveling for too long, still counted as travel, but they're not traveling too long. They can decide to fast, and they can decide to not fast. Okay, that's for the traveler and for the sick person. It's up to the person. Wala kama fil majnun. So he said, as for the person who's insane, it's not wajib upon him to break his fast, nor is it permissible. So he doesn't come under those categories. So for example, you're not going to tell the person, he's saying that he's not allowed to break his fast and say, I'm going to break my fast. And he's not allowed to basically, he doesn't have an option as well. So basically he doesn't come in both of those categories. He doesn't come in those two categories. He's in between. So that's the person who is majnoon. So the person who's majnoon, the person who's insane, he doesn't have to fast because he's insane. And he doesn't have the choice as well to fast or not fast, because from the beginning it's not even obligatory upon him. And he doesn't have an option. The next one is muharram. كمن أخر قضاء رمضان مع تمكنه حتى ضاق الوقت عنه. Okay. The next one is haram. When does it become haram? For the person. So he says it's haram for the person who delayed Ramadan. So it's haram for him to break the fast. Let's say he didn't fast last Ramadan. He missed one day last Ramadan. And then there's only one day left for him to make up that day, that fast for the next Ramadan starts. So can he break that fast? He's not allowed to. It's haram for him to break it because it's obligatory upon him, and he's making up before the next Ramadan. So the Shaykh says it's haram like who delays making up of Ramadan despite having the capability to do so until the time does not permit. So someone, do you understand that last one?
Repeat again.
Let's say someone, let's say this Ramadan that's just passed, a person missed, let's say he missed 2 days. Okay? And the next Ramadan is coming in about, let's say, 8 months. So those 8 months, now in the first month of first month of the year. So let's say he didn't fast throughout the whole year. He didn't make it up. Just before Ramadan, which is, let's say, the month of Sha'ban, just before Ramadan, and he's only got, let's say, 3 days left. And he was supposed to make up 3 days. He didn't have an excuse. He just delayed it without a reason. So those 3 days, he has to fast them, and it's haram for him to break his fast. Because he's only left 3 days for himself. And that's the only 3 days.
Yeah. So he has to recap 3 days. That 3 days is on him he or she to recap it back.
Yeah, they have to make it up. On top of that, when they start fasting, they can't break it. Like, let's say, obviously with ability, if they're sick, then that's another excuse. If they don't have the ability, it's another thing. Let's say someone he started fasting just before Ramadan. There's 3 days left. He started fasting these 3 days, and he had 3 days left to make up from the last year. And then he gets tired after 2 days. Can he say, "Oh, the third day I can't do it"? He does. I'll just do it later on. You can't do that because there's no time.
There's no time to go to gym, so he can't. He has to do it 3.
Yeah. So for him, if he started fasting, it's haram for him to break the fast that day. It's not like the person who has a choice, like, "Oh, I'm traveling, I think I'll just break my fast because I'm traveling." He doesn't have that choice, basically. No. Okay, khair. That is quite clear as well. Then he talks about وأقسام الإفطار أربعة. These people who break their fast, what's the ruling? What's the ruling regarding them as well? So first of all, he says ما يلزم فيه القضاء. Okay. والفدية وهو إثنان. So the types of breaking the fast are 4. So the things that make qada and fidya wajib are 2. So qada means to make up the day. Fidya means they have to expiate, or they have to pay some money, or they have to feed the poor. Okay, so they have to make up. They're gonna be penalized for not basically. They're gonna be penalized, and they make up that day with that punishment as well. So the first one he says, al-iftar يعني ما يلزم فيها القضاء والفدية وهو اثنان. Okay. الأول الإفطار لخوف على غيره. So the first one is breaking the fast due to the fear of harm for others. Okay, so for example, a woman that is breastfeeding, she's breastfeeding and she's fasting, but then she breaks her fast because she thinks that her child is not getting he's not getting milk. So she breaks her fast to feed, to give breast milk to her child. So she's gonna have to drink something so her baby can get breast milk. So for her, she has to make up that day. On top of that, she has to pay the fidya. We're going to look at the fidya, inshallah. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. The next person is breaking the fast. الإفطار مع تأخير قضاء مع إمكانه حتى يأتي رمضان آخر. So Arabic and English is not the same place. So الإفطار مع تأخير قضاء مع إمكانه حتى يأتي رمضان آخر. So the person who breaking the fast and thereafter delaying it. So a person who breaks his fast and he delayed it till the next Ramadan comes. So it was the person we were just talking about. Someone who delayed making up the days he's missed, and then he broke the fast on that day. Okay, so he missed one day from last Ramadan. The next Ramadan comes, and there's one day left before the next Ramadan comes, and then he fasts that day, and then for some reason he breaks his fast. So that person has to make up that day, and he has to pay the fidya. Okay, he has to pay. He has to be penalized. We're gonna see inshallah what the fidya is. Okay, I think. So the fidya is to fast, let's say here would be to feed poor people, to feed 60 people. 60, let's see. Yeah, no, he says here, not 60 people. That's for the person who commits zina, and the person who commits fornication, intercourse, the person who has intercourse during Ramadan. But he has to feed one person for every day he's missed, which he says about 509 grams. Okay? Sa' li kulli yawm. So probably about the sa', which is for every day he's missed. About 500 grams of food for every day that he's missed. And in addition, he has to make it up. Okay. The next one is those. I'll read the Arabic, which is ما يلزم فيه القضاء دون الفدية وهو يكثر كمغمى عليه. So here he says it's like a person who has to make up the day, but he doesn't have to pay or feed people. That's like someone who became unconscious. So the person who became unconscious during Ramadan, all he has to do is just make up that day. He doesn't have to, he's not penalized. Okay, then the next one is ما يلزم فيه الفدية دون القضاء وهو شيخ كبير. This is a different case, which is just look at the Arabic here. So وثالثها ما يلزم فيه الفدية دون القضاء وهو شيخ كبير. So someone who doesn't have to make up the day they missed, and he has to feed the poor, like an old man, he says, like an old man. So an old man who's unable to fast, he doesn't have the ability to fast, therefore he doesn't, and he will not be able to make it up anyway. So he just feeds a poor person for every day that he's not fasting. So for example, 30 days of Ramadan he can't fast, he can feed the poor person, or he can feed 30 people at one go, or he can feed one person each day. Is that clear? Okay.
If you can't do it, you can say a few easier.
What did you say?
They could feed people, 30 people each day.
Yeah, either he can feed 30 people each day, 30 people at the beginning of the month or in the middle of the month, or he can feed them. He can feed them day by day. Actually, either he feeds every day one poor person, or he feeds all of them at the beginning of the month. Okay. The next one is ورابعها لا ولا وهو المجنون الذي لم يتعدى بجنونه. So here he says the person who became insane. So that person is like the one, like what we mentioned before. He doesn't have to make up the day, and he doesn't have to feed the poor. So that's the person who's insane. He doesn't need to do any of those. Okay. Khair, inshallah. We'll move on from that. I think we have just last section left. We can finish off. So فصل الذي لا يفطر مما يصل إلى الجوف سبعة أفراد. So he says here, what reaches the stomach, something that person takes and it reaches the stomach but doesn't break the fast. Something that goes into your body, to your stomach, but it doesn't break the fast. So the first one he says ما يصل إلى الجوف بنسيان. Okay, we have a question there. Does it have to be the same person? So the question is for the same person. So do you mean the same person in terms of, you have to clarify inshallah that question. Oh, okay, yeah. Can you feed 30 different people or can you feed with the same person every day? So you can feed the same person every day. Let's say you have a poor person that you want to feed him in Ramadan. So he can use that food. Obviously, he should be fasting as well. So he can use that as his iftar or his asha or his suhoor. So you feed that person. Normally it will be a ghada. It should be a ghada. It should be what people in that country eat and how much they spend. If you look at it in average. So it doesn't have to be different people. It can be the same person. You can give the same person, and you can feed the same person every day. Okay, khair. So the things which reach the body and get into the stomach and don't break the fast, which is okay. As for the non-Muslim, no, it should be most of the sadaqat and feeding the poor. Most of it goes to the Muslim. There's only one case when it goes to the non-Muslim. So the question was, can you feed a non-Muslim who is poor? If you look at the people of Ahlul Zakah, so the person who takes this food, it should be someone who comes under the 8 categories of the people who deserve Zakah. Okay? So amongst them is إنما الصدقات للفقراء, for the poor, والمساكين, and the needy, and so on. So the 8 categories include the poor, the needy, includes the person who is working, collecting the zakah, the yatim, the orphans, also the person who's traveling, a stranded traveler, the captive to be freed. Also, it includes the people who you are interested in Islam. So people are interested in Islam and you think that they want to become Muslim, so you can give them. Or you can give to people who you want that, you think they would accept Islam, or they have an interest, or you want to get them inclined to accept Islam. These people are the only exception for the people of Zakah. When it comes to other donations, the person can give to who he wants, but these ones are specific. The Zakah and also the feeding the poor and expiating for example, breaking the fast in Ramadan. Okay, khair. So what breaks the fast Yeah, so as long as the person comes, sorry, the question again, he said, so as long as the person comes under these 8 categories, you can take the zakah. He will be eligible for zakah. Okay? The only person the only non-Muslim who is included is the one I mentioned earlier. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, so what doesn't break the salah, even though you've taken it into your body or into your stomach, which is a person who eats by accident. ما يصل إلى الجوف بنسيان, or forgetfulness, not accident by forgetting. So somebody who eats something and then he remembers, I'm fasting. So that person, as we mentioned the hadith earlier, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this person food and drink. In man nasiya man akala man nasiya the hadith was man akala wa huwa sa'im, or man nasiya, as the hadith the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ فَإِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ. So if the person forgets and he eats, he doesn't have to break his fast, he can continue his fast. The next one is jahlin. So if the person is ignorant, he doesn't know this thing breaks the fast. Okay? So, or by force or ikrah, if someone is forced to do something, then his fast doesn't break as well. So I think we need to come up with examples for that. But let's say if the person didn't know that, for example, when you're putting water into your nostrils, so you're sniffing water, that you shouldn't do it deeply, and some water goes into his throat, and he didn't know. So we're not going to tell that person you have to break the fast. We just tell him next time you do wudu, make sure you don't inhale the water into your nose too far. Or someone who's forced, is unlikely to find a case where a person is forced to break his fast. But let's say, because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did say the pan is lifted for the person who's forced to do something. So let's say someone is forced, like someone who's in a battlefield, he's forced to break his fast, or they force him to drink something. Does he continue his fast, or does he break his fast after that? According to this opinion, is that he can break his fast. So that will probably be life-threatening situations where a person is forced to eat something to save his life. But in that case, that person can easily make it up. And even with the case of, like swimming. Swimming is a good example. So let's say a person who swallows water by accident when he's swimming. Okay, so does that make swimming is not, should we say swimming is not allowed? No, swimming is allowed when the person's fasting, but let's say he has to swim. Some people need to get to the other side, or have to swim to a part of their job, or is an emergency, he's saving someone drowning, and then he swallows some water. So according to that, his fast doesn't break. That would be a good example. وبجريان ريق بما بين أسنانه وقد عجز عن مجه لعذره. So let's say he's saying now, if something is in a person's mouth and he couldn't remove it, let's say he had his suhoor, there was something in his mouth, he couldn't remove it, and then he accidentally swallowed it. Okay? So that will not be counted as something that breaks the fast as well. Okay, that one's quite clear. وما وصل إلى الجوف وكان غبار طريق. So he says, let's say the dust and which is in the air that he swallows by accident. So this would come under accident anyway. So let's say just the dust. Even the dust won't be counted as food anyway. It will just be, I think it will be going into his lungs. So I don't know, that one is not really needed. So he says anything that goes into the person's mouth here, if it's dust, that would not be counted as food. Secondly, it would be going into his lungs and not into his... it's like breathing air, so it wouldn't really be included here. وَمَا وَصَلَ إِلَيْهِ وَكَانَ... One second. وَمَا وَصَلَ إِلَيْهِ وَكَانَ غَرْبَلَةَ دَقِيقٍ. Okay. So he says the dust of sifted flour which reaches the body cavity. So here, for example, when a woman is making, for example, she's making the samosa and she's looking at the she might be getting the flour, and that flour goes into her mouth. Okay, so he says that doesn't break the fast. Okay, also this is not really needed. It's not really needed. There's other better examples, I think, to show that that would break the fast. It would be counted as something which is done by without. Let's say somebody swallowed an insect, or insect goes into his throat, and then he swallows it without knowing, like something flies into his mouth, which is unlikely, but that doesn't break the fast as well. Okay, so we can summarize and just say it's either something he forgot, he was fasting and he ate something, that doesn't break the fast. He did something without knowing, like let's say someone who, the example we gave, like someone who sniffs water into his nose, is making wudu, and then say some of that water gets into his nose, he didn't know. We're not going to tell that person you have to fast again. And the person who's forced to do something. So some of the examples he's given shows which happens by force without like a fly going into his mouth or the dust. These are things not counted as food anyway, but I think they consider anything that goes down your throat as something which is counted as food. Wallahu a'lam. So I think this is where the fasting finishes. So just to go over the fidya is sa' likulli yawm. So sa', remember we talked about in zakah, the mud is arba'atu amdad. So 4 handfuls will be 1 sa'. Okay, 4 handfuls would be 1 sa'. And then we said the handful was likulli, so not sa', likulli mud is mud, so a handful for every day, a handful for every day. Here we see it says 509 grams, so that's a mud, which is not sa' but a mud for every day. So about 500 grams for each day. They don't fast to feed the poor. As for the person who did intercourse, his situation is different. So he'll be feeding 60 people, okay, or he will be fasting 60 days, or he'll be freeing a slave. So this is based on a hadith where a man came to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, and he was very worried and he said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm destroyed, halaktu. And then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, what has happened? And then he said, I did intercourse while fasting. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, fast 60 days, and then he said he couldn't do that, and he was someone poor, so he couldn't free a slave, so Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as they sat there, somebody gave him something to give as donation, okay, so he can feed the poor. And then he was a poor person, and then he said, Ya Rasulullah, should I give this to someone who's more poor than me? he was basically saying, there's no one poorer than me in Medina, basically. Then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam laughed, and that man took the food. So the food he gave it to his family. But the ulama, when they look at that hadith, they say that he still would have to make up that fast, or he would have to feed the poor another time. But this one he can take it himself. Wallahu a'lam.